Hello, beautiful beloved. Today I want to talk to you about rising up in generosity. For some of you wonderful ladies, you have the love language of giving gifts. It comes naturally for you to want to share and give gifts. For others like me, it can be harder to want to let go of things. It's easy in our human nature to ask, what's in it for me? And to hold tightly to what we have. However, we have to remember the generosity that God shows us and the example Jesus sets for us. When we choose to give and be generous in the way that Christ shows us, we begin to live in the amazing abundance that God has always intended for us.
Here at Get Lifespiration, our mission is to inspire, encourage, and motivate you to rise up and choose to live your God-given purpose daily. Just like the Proverbs 31 woman of valor. Be strong and of good courage. The Lord your God is with you.
Some of you may wonder what nationality I am. I'm actually half Chinese, and my mom is from Hong Kong. Because of this, I had the opportunity to travel to Hong Kong several times growing up. My grandmother, or papa as you would say in Cantonese, lived in a spacious 1,000 square foot apartment. Now, believe me when I say this is big by Hong Kong standards. Anyways, when she was younger, my grandmother had to go through a time of lack where food and items were scarce. And because of this, she had a tendency to hoard, and though the apartment was quite spacious, the storage rooms, kitchen, closets were stuffed with things because she couldn't bear to throw things away. She would even keep plastic bags after shopping, and you could see them hanging on lines strung across the ceiling like unusual party decorations. When my parents would try to help her clean out her apartment, she would get angry and accuse them of taking things. Then, when she passed away, my parents were the ones who went and cleared out the apartment. They had bags upon bags of garbage they had to walk down the apartment stairs to throw away. Now, not many of us are headed the way of extreme hoarders, but wanting to hold on to physical belongings is natural. It's in our nature to want to be secure. I mean, weren't we just hoarding toilet paper at the start of the pandemic? All joking aside, we feel secure when there's enough food in the pantry, clothes to wear, and money in our savings account. It's easy to want to trust in our material possessions and to find comfort in them rather than in what God can provide. The second way we can give is with our time, our emotions, and our energy. It's easy to care for others after a good night's rest or when we're feeling great. Yet, in the passage we're about to explore, I want to share with you something I never noticed before. Jesus shows us how to give even in the midst of loss and pain. Let's read Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 to 21 together. I'm reading from the NIV version today. The story, Jesus feeds the 5,000. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said, and he directed the people to sit on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000, besides women and children. Now, this is a story I have heard over and over again since childhood. I've read it to my boys at night during our story times together. Yet until this past week, I never noticed something. What happened to Jesus right before he ends up feeding the 5,000? Just a few verses prior, we read that Jesus' cousin John the Baptist is beheaded. When Jesus learns of his death, he chooses to go to a deserted place by himself. If I am to guess, Jesus has just gone away to mourn the death of a dearly beloved. He's probably sad and wants time to grieve. Just because we know we will see someone in heaven doesn't change the fact that we mourn their loss here on earth. Even though Jesus has just gone through a time of loss, his solitude does not last long. People keep on coming to him, and he finds himself surrounded by crowds asking for his help. Now, if you just lost a loved one, would you be ready to jump up and minister to others and help them? When a family member dies, we take time off work. Friends give us meals. Yet here Jesus is doing the opposite. He gives out of his loss. He shows compassion and begins healing the sick. Then, as the day goes on, people begin to get hungry. The place is remote, remember, because Jesus was trying to get some alone time, and now they're stuck in the middle of nowhere without access to food. And this part is my favorite. Jesus tells his disciples to give them something to eat, even though they don't have enough food or money to provide for the crowd of over 5,000 people. If we jump over to John 6:9, we see one little but important detail we miss here in Matthew's account. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Out of the crowds of people, one small boy comes forward and offers his lunch. Maybe he was standing close by and he heard when Jesus told the disciples to give the people something to eat. Nonetheless, he hears about the need and gives what he is able to share. He gives it in faith, not worrying about how far it will go and that what he has is not nearly enough to feed 5,000 people. He gives it anyway. A pastor who taught on this passage challenged me. Are you willing to give Jesus your lunch? Let me ask the same of you today. Are you willing to give Jesus your lunch? You might not think you have much. You may be tapped out emotionally and feel like you don't have the resources. Yet we are to be like Jesus, giving as needs arise and as people come to us. When we give generously with what we have, it is not our job to determine if it will be enough. First, we see Jesus giving and ministering even though he wanted to be alone. Next, we see a boy giving his lunch because he had faith that Jesus would be able to do something with it. After the people were fed, the disciples gathered 12 full baskets of leftovers. Not only was what the boy gave enough, there was an abundance left over. Don't despise what little you have. Give it anyways. You never know what God will do with what you are willing to give in faith. When we hold onto our worldly possessions, it's like holding onto old plastic shopping bags. There's no use for them except to clutter and take up room in our lives. When we give, we make space for new opportunities and growth in our lives. And if you're watching this, I hope you can share in the comments what you are inspired to give Jesus today. God can take our little and multiply it far beyond what we can imagine. So may you rise up, give your lunch to Jesus, and be generous with what you have. God bless you, and see you soon.